You say that Adam and Eve are archetypes. Just for those of us that aren't as learned, remind us, what is an archetype again, and how does that affect what we would learn from Genesis?
Mm-hmm. An archetype is basically one that represents a group, represents the whole. So for instance, we talk about Abraham as the archetype of faith. We're all in Abraham and because we share his faith. When Paul talks about Adam and talks about Christ, the whole use of first Adam and second Adam is archetypal. They're representative of the group. And so that's what an archetype is.
So how does that affect Genesis 1 and 2?
Well, I think it's important because when we try to understand what is it that the text is trying to present as it presents Adam and Eve, we ask that question in Genesis 1, what story is the text telling? And I'm asking that same question in chapter 2. What part of the story is the text telling? Is it telling the individual material story, or is it telling the archetypal representative story? And as I've developed in the material, I think that they're telling the archetypal materials.
Once again, my modern rational self doesn't like that answer. I want it to be, you know, science. I want it to be explanations of concrete things and individuals. And it just seems that the ancient world wasn't looking for those answers.
And that gets us to the very important issue that we've been talking about over and over again. We have to take the Bible on its own terms. We have to make every attempt to read it seriously, a close reading, to find out what it is doing, rather than trying to extract from it the answers, the kinds of answers that we want.
So is it possible, if Adam and Eve were archetypes, were representatives, if Eve wasn't actually the mother of all living things, which is what Adam referred to her as, how could she not be the mother of all, the ancestor of all humanity, if Adam said, "You're the mother of all living"?
Well, of course she might be, but she wouldn't have to be. A couple chapters later, in chapter 4, some of Cain's descendants are the father of all those who live in tents and the father of those who play musical instruments. And there we see a term like father used.
Are you saying they weren't?
Not biologically.
If I live in a tent today, can I trace my lineage back to that child of Cain?
Only archetypally, not biologically. And so in that sense, even those terms father and mother have archetypal use to them.
Wow. So anywhere in the Bible, does it suggest that Adam and Eve weren't the first people?
It wouldn't come right out and say that, but certainly there are indications in the text that may not be the case. And these are things that we've always considered problems. Where does Cain get his wife? When God...
She was a mail-order bride.
Apparently. When God drives Cain away from him, Cain says, "Oh, now anybody who finds me will kill me." Who are these anybodies that he's talking about? And then before you know it, he's building a city. And who's he building a city for?
They were highly productive.
So in that sense, the text doesn't indicate clearly or explicitly that there were such other people, but there are hints there, and that would be one way to answer those questions.
Wow.